Welcome to Episode 2 of the Turmoil and Tabernacle. Inbreds and Imbeciles. If most people really knew what their local politicians say about them behind their backs regarding how they feel about them, or the votes that they're taking that affect their lives, it might just make tar and feathering a thing again. The decision to demolish the town hall was not made by Stone alone. She was joined by committeeman and former mayor Sam Moore, along with Mayor Mark Hartman. Just hours prior to the March 25th committee meeting, Moore posted on his Facebook page, quote, "With great power comes great responsibility." With Hartman responding, "Truth, they think their needs are more important than the people's needs." And Moore responding, "They are shaking the wrong tree, my friend. Smile and wave." Hartman then says, "Hell yes, this will be fun," referring to the vote they would be taking later that evening to award the demolition contract to Rico Demolition. After I got involved on March 28th, I was soon contacted by a contractor who was a part of a pre-bid meeting just weeks earlier for roughly 24 contractors to examine the building so they could bid on the cost of demolition, with the contractor claiming that the building's floors didn't even make a creak with roughly 30 grown men inside. A week later, I published my first article, letting the people know that just 2 weeks prior to Tom Boyd and Tom Lisi declaring that the building was going to collapse onto the road, nearly some 30 grown men were crawling through every inch of the building at the same time, making the claim of it being in imminent danger of collapse absolutely ridiculous. The April 8th committee meeting was standing room only, with roughly 160 people packing the firehouse to find out what would happen next, with Deputy Mayor Stone chastising the public and former committee people for not taking care of the old town hall. I again requested that they hire an independent structural engineer, yet the same three who voted to demolish the building also voted to not allow an independent structural engineer, prompting me to yell from the audience, "You are going to get a lawsuit!" The next day I started asking the Tabernacle locals who was the most trustworthy to handle a fundraiser to seek money to hire an attorney, and a day or so later, a former committee person stepped up and launched a GoFundMe campaign. But the demolition was scheduled for just a week later, so time was of the essence. In just a couple of days, we raised more than $10,000, so now it was time to find an attorney who would take the case, so I began to hunt. The day after the April 8th meeting, I looked at Tom Lisi's LinkedIn page, only to find out that he only had a degree in chemical engineering, which means he was not qualified to make a determination on the structural integrity of the building. And I posted this to several Facebook Tabernacle groups, which caused quite the stir. I wrote, "The engineer from Pannoni Associates, who deemed the town hall as in imminent danger of collapse, Thomas Lisi, has a degree in chemical engineering. He seems qualified." What the fuck? When I made public comments at the April 8th meeting, I mentioned another situation where a historical building was torn down by the NJDOT the day before an injunction was set to be heard to stop the demolition, which was filed by attorney Matt Litt, yet was never able to be heard since the building was already gone. So when Litt took the case, he sent a letter on April 15th to the township letting them know that any attempt to demolish the building was, in effect, destruction of evidence, and began to prepare a lawsuit seeking an injunction to halt the demolition of the building until an independent structural engineer could inspect the building. But on April 17th, I got word that the demolition was set to take place the next day anyway, and Matt Litt let me know that seeking an injunction would be pointless at that juncture, especially considering that the Pinelands Commission had just approved the demolition. So I made a post explaining this to the public, and the trolls and detractors that had been waiting for me to make a mistake jumped all over me, claiming that I was now going to steal the money raised and ride off into the sunset. I called back Matt Litt and let him know that I really needed him to file this injunction, and that I didn't care if it was futile. I said, quote, "I need you to throw the Hail Mary." Yet he still refused. Knowing that my chances of saving the building were now very slim, I decided to hold a protest at the town hall to try and get more attention, and about 40 people showed up. By this time, Litt had agreed to throw the Hail Mary, but I didn't let the public know and allowed everyone to think that it was not going to be filed. I sent footage of the protest to several news outlets, and the next day, several of them showed up in Tabernacle and ran a story that night, which also let the township know that the suit was going to be filed the next morning. After the suit was filed, the township solicitor, William Burns, wrote to the judge and let her know that the demolition was moving forward the next day on the 19th. That evening, I sent a screenshot of a post made by Deputy Mayor Natalie Stone to her Facebook Messenger, a post that I knew would end her short-lived political career if I released it to the public, in hopes that she'd respond and I could have a conversation with her about the town hall, only she didn't respond. So that evening, just before the court hearing was set to be heard the next day, I posted a screenshot of the 2020 post from Stone that read, "I'm reading a book on the Pine Barrens, and there is actual truth to Pineys being incestuous, illiterate, mentally deficient, inbred imbeciles, supposedly responsible for generations of morons and prostitutes. Fascinating, I'll tell you." The people of Tabernacle and the surrounding areas within the Pine Barrens forest are known as Pineys, which is a term that some folks in the region embrace, but it's also a term that can be used as an insult, especially when used at the local high school by kids from Medford to describe their dirt bike riding neighbors. The people who proudly call themselves Pineys are mostly blue-collar farming types, but there are enclaves of mini-mansions in Tabernacle that have gone in over the past 2 decades where some transplants live from places like Medford, like Stone, who refuse to identify themselves as a Piney, or they only do so when it's convenient for them. Stone's comments about her constituents made national and international headlines, with the New York Post, Daily Mail, and dozens of local outlets picking up the story about Stone referring to the people she is representing as inbred imbeciles. Stone's attempt at an apology was just more insults. "A big shout out to less than the 10 friends here are defending me in this shit show. The rest of you friends watching me take it up the ass with a sandpaper condom can see your way out now. Please do me a favor. Oh, I get you don't want to put yourself out there, right? Pfft. I always say devout good people like me would die a martyr on the town square." On the morning of the 19th, Judge Richard Hertzberg issued an injunction where he halted the demolition of the old town hall and ruled that an independent structural engineer be brought in to evaluate the structural integrity of the building. This ruling sent shockwaves through New Jersey's political world, and more importantly, it gave people hope, and not just the people of Tabernacle. And while this episode might be over, the story is just beginning, so please stay tuned for the next episode.